All right, we're going to keep things moving. I am really excited about our next speaker. So I joined the industry back in 2019. And one of my first jobs in the industry was to assort dispensaries. And my first question was, where's the data? And everybody kind of looked at me like a deer in headlights because there was no real data in this industry. But Headset quickly came in. They have great data. They are one of my favorite data solutions out there. They have such great products and services, and they have great new innovation that I'm sure Cy will be sharing with you. So with that, please give it up for the amazing Cy Scott.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Lori. That was great. I could get used to that every morning. Good morning, everybody. My name's Cy Scott, as Lori said, CEO and co-founder of Headset. So we do retail measurement data. That means we work with retail and dispensary operators to help them understand what's going on with their own stores and what's going on in the market. So everything I'm going to be talking about today is what's happening with consumers right now when it comes to the Ohio market, as we're in Ohio. So the first thing that I want to share with everyone is one number. And that number is 508,000. That number, 500,000, or more than 500,000, pre-rolls sold in Ohio in 1 month. Now, if you're used to or you're exposed to other markets, you might think, well, that number is, it's fair, it's big, but it's not that big. I've seen larger numbers out there. The thing with Ohio, though, if you're newer to the category here, is that pre-rolls only became available in August. So in less than a year, we're seeing a significant increase in pre-rolls. And I think this is a real signal for where this market's going. And I want to talk a lot about where this market's going today. Before August 1st, if you wanted a pre-roll in Ohio, you would have to either roll your own or you'd have to go to a place like Michigan. And that Michigan comment matters because, as you'll see, in a future slide, when we compare the markets, I think Ohio can look very similar as far as volume. So let's zoom out a little bit and start with the macro view here of Ohio. So Ohio is now a $1 billion market, over $1 billion in the trailing 12 months of sales. So congratulations, Ohio. That's a huge milestone. And just in March, crossed $101 million. So it's the second 9-figure month in Ohio's history. And this is obviously just going to continue and continue to scale. It's 20% in Q1 this year versus Q1 last year. So you've got really strong growth. And honestly, this is a pretty unique story in cannabis right now. There are not a lot of regulated markets out there that are seeing any sort of growth. Ohio, New York maybe being some exceptions. And SB 56, which I'm sure many of you are familiar, is going to unlock the dispensary count here. I think when I prepared this, it was 204 dispensaries. I think it's 207, 208, maybe even more at this point. So they're already starting to open. And implicitly right there, you're going to see growth happening just from more access. That's a common thread we see. The more access that consumers have, the more sales that will happen. So expect that. It's just a huge market and still accelerating at this point. So kind of looking in the market, well, what is driving the sales? And I think it's not particularly surprising to see flower there with 50% of the market. That's pretty high for an average market. But again, it's a newer market, a newer adult use regulated market here. Vapor pens about 25%, 10% year over year. Edibles, 36 million, 12% of the market. So that's all great, but pre-rolls, as I mentioned on that first slide, is really what I want to dig into. It is the breakout category right now, but not to paper over here, concentrates and beverages. And both of those are relatively small categories, but I think there's some interesting things happening with beverage, particularly around the hemp beverage and the changes that have happened in Ohio around that and the opportunity that potentially unlocks. But let's talk about pre-rolls. Pre-rolls are the breakout category, up 79% in 6 months. I think in August, it did about 19,000 units of sales, and here we are, 508,000 at the end of March. It's the end of April today. I guarantee you this number is much bigger. So we're going to keep watching this trajectory. When you look at the units and the revenue, it's now Ohio's fourth largest category. It's definitely going to end up being, at a minimum, the third largest category here, if not the second largest. And we have a list of brands, and I'll talk about the brands that comprise Ohio a little bit, and it's pretty interesting with kind of the homegrown nature here that you see with some of these brands, with some exceptions like dog walkers from GTI there. So in Ohio, things are much more expensive than a market like Michigan. So Michigan does 11 million units of pre-rolls monthly, trailing 12 months of revenue over $600 million. And you contrast that with the most recent monthly number here in Ohio of 500,000. You've got a long way to go in Ohio here. The nice thing is with the pricing. At $14 versus $5, more or less, you got 3x per pre-roll than Michigan. Now, the thing is, and I'll talk a little bit more about pricing, I want to emphasize that I think that there's a path to the volume, certainly. I think pricing is going to be a little bit different story. I don't think you can model a long-term 3x price increase for pre-rolls. So when you look at overall size of the market, even if we just take the number of dispensaries, and we know it's roughly 200, it's going to be 400. You're going to double the amount of monthly units sold in pre-roll at a minimum. The opportunity is huge, right? But the pricing is going to come down just a bit. Right now, Ohio flower costs 2 times Michigan's, and that gap is really the runway that exists right now. And with SB 56, there are some changes with purchasing in Michigan. I don't know how much that's going to hold, but there is some pricing pressure when you have a neighbor like Michigan selling at a much lower rate. And we've just seen naturally, as dispensary counts go up, competition goes up, pricing naturally goes down. But I think Ohio has some things going in its favor versus a market like Michigan, where you have just many more licenses, less controls, and it's just caused everything to be significantly cheaper. So I don't think you're going to end up with Michigan prices by any means, but I think you're not going to be able to hold the prices that are here today. So SB 56, if you're not familiar, it did make some big changes. So hemp THC banned everywhere. I think, though, in the last few weeks since I put this presentation together, there have been some changes and some court orders, and like this whole thing still a bit up in flux. But that did happen. The dispensary cap, as we talked about, cross-border purchasing is illegal. That's the first time I've heard of that. I'm not sure how much that's going to discourage consumers or what that looks like, but just having that on the books may very well keep the sales in Ohio, which will only help Ohio. And then the cap on extracts, that's going to impact the vapor pen category there. So what does that mean? I think it means that there is a potential to see hemp spend moving into regulated stores, which is great. I think it means that we're going to see more stores opening and more sales and more volume, and you're going to see this billion-dollar market quickly turn into a $2+ billion market. And I think that the leakage, the purchases happening in Michigan, especially with the THC cap, you may see still more of that happening, and people still willing to take the risk to purchase in Michigan. Beverages, I think with the ban, there is an opportunity. Ohio is interesting, and a lot of markets are interesting where you have people purchasing hemp-derived beverages in maybe traditional channels, and now they can no longer do that. That might bring them into the regulated channel. It's nuanced and it's not so simple, but I think that exposure can only help the category, and we have seen some good growth in the category very recently. And finally, I think this is kind of an interesting call out. When we looked at the data, Ohio is very much a homegrown market, meaning most of the top 5 brands, I think except for one there, which is Rhythm, a GTI brand, is a Ohio cultivator. And they're holding the line, and I think they will continue to do so. But I think the competition and the pressure will continue. So watch pre-rolls, watch this market. We expect to see it continue to grow. It's a great place. It's a great market to talk about when we talk about the growth of the category, and keep doing what you're doing in Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you, Cy. Give it up again for Cy Scott. All right. Thank you, Cy. I think his insights were fantastic. Cy and his team are here all day. Make sure you find them. They have wonderful information that can really help you drive your business forward.